Hey guys, Quiff the Lazy Geek here, and today we have something new to play with. It is the Optolong L-eXtreme filter, which is, many people will call it a light pollution filter. I will call it a narrowband filter. And it's been featured on many YouTubers' channels. So my friend Sean from Visible Dark, or we also have Trevor Jones, who actually also featured that filter recently. But they're not in Tokyo, they're not in Bortle 8, Bortle 9 as I am. And so filters, or light pollution filters, they kind of face their ultimate test here, and we see which ones actually survive the crucible of combat in Tokyo. And so that's what I'm gonna do to this poor little filter. They're prepared to be tortured. And that filter, what is very special about it is that, well, it is a dual band filter. So basically it will let in through two band passes, one called oxygen 3, the other H alpha, which correspond to frequencies of light that are emitted by emission nebulae, like all of those nebulae in the Milky Way basically. And you can use, because you are capturing, oxygen 3 is one frequency of light that's towards the blue-green spectrum, and H alpha is towards the red spectrum. So by just having two of those bands, you can basically use a color camera with a filter like that, capture only those two bands. So it does not work well for other objects than emission nebulae, but it can give you excellent results even in light polluted areas on emission nebulae. Now, of course, it depends on the amount of light pollution that you have. So it's not the first time that such a filter exists. Actually, it's been kind of the latest trend in filters, which has been narrowband filters are very tight light pollution filters for color cameras. And another one that's been done is the ZW dual band filter, for example. And even there's a filter from Optolong that's called the L-enhanced that basically does that. There's the OPT triode filter, there's the OPT triode ultra filter, there's the there's one that's specific to Japan called the quad band or quad BP filter. I don't remember exactly which brand it is. I think it was Citron, but I'm not completely sure. And their prices vary. And the reason that the L-eXtreme is so novel is because the band passes around the light, the frequency of light that you are trying to capture, are as tight as possible. Well, not as tight as possible, but they're much tighter than before. And to understand a bit about band passes, you have, if you have one single frequency of light that you want to capture, so you want to make sure that you don't capture other frequencies around that target frequency, because those other frequencies, they do not contain nebula signal, they do not contain something you want to capture, they only contain light pollution basically. And those band passes, you can make them very, very tight with very, very expensive filters. So my bazooka here actually has filters that are more or less made for monochrome cameras that are single band each, and I have one filter for H alpha, one filter for oxygen 3, and then I have one filter for another band pass, which is sulfur 2. And I can take pictures with each of those one after another, and then I can combine all of those pictures into a false color image like those provided by the Hubble telescope. There's even something called the Hubble palette that refers to the color scheme, the way that the Hubble telescope actually maps those light frequencies to certain colors. And the filters I have in here are super expensive because they have a very tight band pass of 3 nanometers, which is really super helpful in Tokyo. And even then, I get worse results for the same amount of capture time as people in darker areas with cheaper filters. So you can see how critical keeping that band pass very tight is. Now, the ZW dual band filter is actually in my filter drawer, and I used it in a recent video, and I'm going to put a link in the up above here if you want to check it out, to capture the Crescent Nebula. and I took, I think, 700 exposures. I had to throw away a few, so in total 607 exposures of 30 seconds each in a single night, and here was the result. Now you notice the result is not that bad. It's okay. I mean, and I know that, you know, many beginners would be super satisfied with that, and I am actually fairly satisfied with that, but it doesn't capture as much nebulosity as I want, and this is because the ZW dual band filter has fairly wide band passes, and that's why it's cheap. And one of the band passes around oxygen 3 is 35 nanometers compared to 3 in there, and another one around H alpha is actually, or hydrogen alpha is actually, I think 15 or maybe 10. Let's say 15 for now. Apologies if I'm wrong, but it's fairly wide. And something to know is that LEDs and moonlight, a lot of that light pollution is actually extremely prone to entering the bandpass towards oxygen 3, towards blue-green. And so that's why, like, having a very wide bandpass at oxygen 3 is not a good idea. Enter this L-eXtreme filter. So the L-eXtreme filter, we're going to open it, we're going to look at it, and here is this beauty. Now this beauty has 7 nanometer band passes. So with 7 nanometers band passes, it's not quite as good as this, but it gets really close, and it is certainly much better than 35 nanometers that the ZWO filter has. And so what I want to do tonight, if the skies let me and if the weather holds, we'll see if that's truly the case, is put this L-eXtreme filter through its paces and basically target with the same equipment. Exactly the same equipment, same camera, same settings, and hopefully we'll get the same amount of exposure time. We'll target the Crescent Nebula, see what we can get out of it. And actually today is a bit worse conditions, because when I captured the Crescent Nebula with the ZW filter, I was in a new moon. Today we have, first quarter, almost the first quarter moon. So it's going to be a bit brighter, at least for the early hours of the night. So let's put my Optolong filter in my filter drawer, preferably without dropping it, as I have a bad habit of dropping expensive equipment. So you can call me Quiv, the dropping geek as well. That works too. And we have the filter in the filter drawer, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is in, it is ready for the night, and we're going to take pictures with it soon. Now, one thing that is super important is compare those boxes. ZW, Optolong. Which one would you buy? Based on the box alone, I'm like, I love it. 100% would recommend, would buy again. Just kidding, of course. Boxes mean nothing, but you know, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's marketing, right? But I don't know, it feels nice. I still throw away boxes anyway. Who cares? But with that, I'm going to test it out. So this little guy will be taking the Crescent Nebula. This big dude here will be taking more frames on the M27 Planetary Nebula, also known as the Dumbbell Nebula, to try to see if I can get more details out of the lobes that we have around the nebula that are mostly actually in oxygen 3. So, but a bit of H alpha mixed in, so you have a bit of red tint, blue tint. It's kind of beautiful. So we'll see what we get out of this, but the most important will be checking out the results of the L-eXtreme against the ZW dual band, and we'll see how satisfied I am with my results, considering that I am in an extremely light polluted area. And that's why I'm saying it is going to be a much more rough test, a much more, you know, torture test of that filter than I've seen in other YouTube videos, simply because of where I am. And so if you're interested in that, keep tuned. Also, if this kind of video interests you, feel free to subscribe to this channel. It's all about astrophotography and astronomy. And, you know, I'll be taking the pictures. I'll see you tomorrow morning with the results. Okay, and let's have a look at the results. So you can probably see on my screen right now, this is the image, as a reminder, that I got with the ZW dual band filter. This is in the end with 607 of the best frames out of 700 that I have stacked and processed in PixInsight. And all of those frames were 30 seconds long. And so that means that if I wanted to have the same amount of data with the L-eXtreme, I would need to get with 60-second exposures, which is what I saw I kind of needed with the L-eXtreme, since the band passes are narrower. to like overwhelm the read noise, which is a good thing, I would need around 303, 304 exposures. I did not manage to get that. I only managed across 2 or 3 nights to get 285 usable exposures because there were streaming clouds, there were high-level clouds, there was the moon coming up. So I did the last imaging run with the L-eXtreme was with a half moon. So we were in much worse conditions when taking the picture with the L-eXtreme than I was with the ZW duoband. Now with the duoband, it's not a bad image, but you can tell there's a lot of nebulosity missing. Now I've also processed it to the best of my ability to get the nebulosity kind of like to the forefront of the image. But then okay, I got the L-eXtreme. I tried with 285 frames, so we have less integration time in worse conditions, and this is what I got from the L-eXtreme. Okay, so you know, I also processed it to get the most nebulosity out of this. So the contrast between the Crescent Nebula in this one and the Crescent Nebula in the old one with the background is not as strong, but this is intentional. It's a question of processing. But what we can see immediately is that we captured a little tiny bit more nebulosity around the nebula than we did earlier with the ZW duoband. And also we can see that the ZW duoband was quite noisy. We did catch kind of like a bit of the outer blue oxygen 3 type of shell of the nebula, and we did the same with this particular one, although it is also quite noisy. So I was actually expecting to see a bit more of that blue outer shell with the L-eXtreme than I did with the ZW band. So it's like it's a big difference. Let's say it is a big difference. There is a lot more potential with the L-eXtreme, but I feel like it's exactly as expected, really, considering the specs on paper of the L-eXtreme. For emission nebulae, the L-eXtreme is great if you have an OSC camera, a color camera, or even a DSLR. And you do not want to try to go for a monochrome camera with narrowband filters that are expensive. The L-eXtreme is a very good compromise. And I had in the past the Radian Triband Ultra, no, the Triad Ultra. The name of the filter was the Triad Ultra, which had even tighter band passes than the L-eXtreme, but it also includes something like H-beta, which is not a bandwidth that, you know, it can help for some objects, but it's not something that I really would want to capture quite a lot. So the L-eXtreme, I think, is a great filter for color cameras. The only thing you will not be able to do, and it's unlike monochrome cameras, is you cannot decide to take more oxygen 3 or more sulfur 2 pictures to get a better signal to noise ratio for those, because we know that the signal from the nebula is lower in those band passes than it is for H-alpha. So that's something you cannot control with a color camera. But otherwise, it's really good. And I did some further tests. So here we had the on the left, the L-eXtreme that was at a disadvantage in terms of imaging condition from the ZW band on the right. So it still did an amazing job as far as I'm concerned. We also have, I also decided to take like 3 pictures in a row in like 2/3 full moon kind of conditions yesterday, where we have first on the Veil Nebula, because the Veil is rich in H-alpha and it's rich in oxygen 3. And here we have CLS CCD filter. These have been calibrated with dark frames but not flats. And if I look at a CLS CCD filter, we can kind of see that here there is a bit of nebulosity that is visible. We also have a tiny bit of nebulosity that's barely visible here. This is a single 60-second frame. If I go to the ZW duoband, well, as expected, I see more. I see like there's more resolution to this particular nebulosity here. Just also to give background, the CLS CCD filter is a general purpose light pollution filter. It's not really made for emission nebulae. This one is made made for emission nebulae, and as expected I get more contrast between the nebula itself and the background, so we can see some structure, some details there, and there's also some of the structure here that is also visible. And then the L-eXtreme, and the L-eXtreme is even more different. You can see that we have even more structure. It's like a single 60 seconds frames from Tokyo under 3/4 moon, and we're starting to really see quite a bit of structure in the main veil. I don't know, western veil, eastern veil, I don't remember which part it is itself, and then still more details in here. So it's really as expected, but that means that for people who have color cameras, who image nebulae, who have a DSLR, you can use the L-eXtreme filter like almost blindly, and you will be able to get proper results on emission nebulae, even from a very, very light polluted area. So it is possible, and that crescent picture here really is the proof of that, taken from Tokyo here. I'm also currently working on a project where this particular area here, I'm taking it with exactly the same framing with my L-eXtreme. And I think I've gathered around 660-second exposures. I'll probably call it a day with that. Maybe that's something I'll want to do a mosaic on one day. But anyway, for now, this is what we're getting. And if the image is any good, and hopefully it will be, even though it's been like through cloud and stuff, the conditions have really not been ideal, I'll be putting it at the end of the video. So in conclusion, the L-eXtreme, do I recommend it? Yes, of course I do. It's not as good. It's not going to be as good as monochrome filters with a single band filters with a monochrome camera, where you can actually choose to take more exposures for the band passes that have less signal. But it's a great filter for color cameras. It's relatively cheap for what it does, much cheaper than the Triad Ultra, and I think, to be honest, probably just as good for emission nebulae. It performs great. And it's really a good option for those of you who have color cameras, which is really a lot of astro imagers, because that's typically where we start. It's just simpler to start in terms of materials needed, of money spent, and of processing to learn, like from the learning curve, to start with color. And I think this L-eXtreme filter makes everything really feasible. And yes, that's pretty much it for this video. So I hope this was educational, that you learned something, that you may want to buy that L-eXtreme if you are in a light polluted area. If you do buy the L-eXtreme and you don't mind shopping from OPT, feel free to use my affiliate links down below to get it. Otherwise, get it from wherever you want, wherever has it in stock, or wherever has it cheap. I personally got it from Cyclops Optics in Hong Kong, simply because they had a great delivery time to me, and it was in stock and it was cheap. So all of the stars aligned for me to get it from Cyclops Optic. But I don't mind getting things from the US, because it is not currently available directly from Japan resellers. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're not subscribed to this channel, if you like this kind of video, so this was a pretty in-depth review of the L-eXtreme with comparisons with other filters. But I usually do like imaging nights. Recently I did a trip to Tokyo Tower and imaging right under the foot of Tokyo Tower. I'm looking to it above, that kind of stuff. It goes from educational to imaging nights. And if that sounds like it's something that's interesting, please feel free to go down below, click on that subscribe button, click on the little notification bell, and as always, feel free to click that like button, leave a comment down below if you have any ideas, suggestions, anything you want to tell me. I read all of the comments and I reply to most of them. And with that, again, thank you so much for watching. Remember, whenever you can, to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.